The confines of the third dimension are on hold. Limitations are lifted. We are sovereign. Transmissions.
Well, thank you for a second interview, which I hope to be many. Our first one was just a flying good time.
Yeah, it was kind of like old friends finding one another, you know.
Yeah, so I think we're going like backwards. So we figured that out, old friends finding each other. And after that initial interview, you graciously provided me with a copy of your book, The Mammonite Agenda. And if that wasn't a way to solidify my interest in your more interviews, I don't know what would be. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, but eager to get started because now as I walk about planet surface, I'm using that in my nomenclature, like, oh, that's Mammonite, or oh,
right.
Mammon.
Right.
And I don't even know if I'm doing it 100% correctly. So I think today what I'd love to do is kind of introduce your study of what you call the Mammonite Agenda so that we can kind of share with folks what you mean by that and how it is impacting us in the world today.
Well, Mammon is really an old term that referred to riches or wealth. But it also, I think, really referred to someone who is obsessed with the physical world as opposed to being knowledgeable of the spiritual world also. And so, you know, of course, we don't really use mammon that much in today's vernacular, but, you know, back then apparently there was good reason to discern between those two realities, you know, whereas now those two realities aren't really something that people find as important in their lives. And so I thought, well, you know, it's important that we turn the clock or bring the pendulum back around and do incorporate the spiritual world in our life. And in order to do that, you know, it's kind of like you can't come up with a solution until you understand the problem. And the problem, as I saw it, is everyone is so obsessed with physical comfort and security and safety and ego and presentation and, you know, yada, 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 that it was important for us to understand that before we could get a glimpse of, well, what's the alternative, or do we have an alternative, or why should we consider an alternative? So that's the reason I put the book together. And ironically, I learned later, you know, even with my business administration degree from the University of South Carolina, that you don't write a book and title it with a word that no one's ever heard of. so that didn't work out real well, but you know, but like you said, I mean, more and more people, you know, now people is part of their vernacular. Once they read the book, you know, they go, oh, I was someplace and there were Mammonites everywhere, you know. It does become, you know, but initially, yeah, I probably could have done a better job of that.
Well, I'm just out here on the perimeter using the word, so I'm trying to get it back in nomenclature, but this will help, definitely. And like you said, it was something that was used years ago, and one of those things we lost. And language is important. If we don't have words for the things, you know, if the word just disappears, then where's the concept for it, right? So now we have a world full of people that have forgotten that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and the human experience has become everything. And we walk around fearing death, and there we go. So it's a wonderful time to bring it back.
Yeah, I think so. I think the timing's right. It's, you know, it's kind of one of those things I say, you know, when the time is right, the teacher will appear, you know. And so I think the book, of course, ironically, I wrote that right before the stock market crashed in 2008, you know. And so it was, in some degree, it was prophetic, and that, you know, that was the ultimate Mammonite blunder, you know, that, you know, because there was just this massive greed on Wall Street that ended up hurting a lot of people. And it still hurting a lot of people.
Yeah, it seemed to manifest was 9/11. You know, these two structures built by man that is, you know, godlike. We're going to defy gravity and build these things, and that they tumble, and there goes the Mammon.
Well, ironically, you're right. I mean, if you read or study the seven prophecies, or the prophecy of the seven fires, which is a real interesting Anishinaabe prophecy. I mean, you can Google the prophecy of the seven fires. It was foretold that day was the end of the seventh fire when that 9/11, and so we now end the eighth fire, which is kind of the it's foretold that this is when man's going to start figuring out that it's not all about Mammon, that there is more about spirituality, and more particular that we need to understand the spirit of the planet we're on, and start honoring that. And if you look at, now you got drought everywhere, and everybody's trying to understand what's going on, and all these scientific minds are trying to come up with a solution to the problems. You really got a bunch of Mammonites trying to figure out a Mammonite problem, without coming to terms with the fact that, maybe there's another piece that we've chosen to ignore that we can't ignore anymore.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because just a few days ago I had a friend tell me about the Inuit in Alaska, where actually my uncle worked and lived with them. They just recently went to NASA and said the sun has moved. So I don't know how long the Inuit have been the Inuit, but since their recorded memory and time of their culture, they have depended on the way that the sun shines, the way that the wind moves onto the snow. It makes ripples. Those ripples point in a direction they know where to grow. So they've been watching this. They don't watch the news, ticker tapes, Wall Street. They watch the planet, and they're coming and saying, you guys might want to know about this. Well, then, so as I start reading it, they come with a global warming political agenda thing and say, no, it's this. Those Inuit just don't understand. And so that makes me think about when you said about ego and Mammon. I wonder about this scientific method thing that's been around for 400 years. And it fits into man thinking that we can measure everything, and we're so smart. And then there's these people separated from our, our agenda over here.
Well, you're starting to see, there actually are scientists who are beginning to start seeing something's different. I read about a team that I think was in Antarctica, and they were trying to filter out cosmic rays in order to get to the measurement of some other ray, and I can't remember what it was. And they couldn't do it, and they couldn't understand what was going on. It was like there's this massive influx of cosmic rays that had never been seen before. I mean, what the people don't understand is that there is a relationship between the sun and the earth, and that relationship is vital for life on this planet. And for life on this planet to change and evolve, the relationship between the sun and the earth is going to change, and that's currently going on. You take the masculine energy of the sun and the feminine energy of the earth. It's like the sun is feeding Grandmother Earth the energy and that is needed for her to evolve. So the sun is supporting her evolution, and of course everybody's running around trying to say, well, this is man-made, and it's climate warming and this and that. Because they're trying to see it through a Mammonite's eyes and understand,
right? Because
that's the frame of reference that everybody has in trying to understand what's going on. It's hard for them to stop and say, oh well, there's an evolution occurring here. We need to just get ready for it because it's coming. There's nothing, nobody can stop it. It's on the way. You can say it's man-made. To some degree, it probably is. If nothing else, the discussion on climate warming is important just to get people to all understand, you've got to take care of your planet. And whether you're evangelical or an Inuit shaman, that's a commonality there, a thread of consciousness that they both agree on. And so it doesn't matter where you're coming from. The bottom line is the planet is dependent upon us nurturing it and taking care of it. I think that really is what is starting to evolve out of this. Hopefully it is. But the cosmic shift in relationship between the sun and the planet is definitely changing, as it should, and as will continue to do so.
So you have these people, and I hear what you're saying, that there's something good about it, and that the intent inside people, even though they come from varying directions about global warming, the intent is good, which is we must take care of the planet. Sometimes the solutions get bogged down in political schmagegi, and people they get in the mire, in the thick of it, in the bramble, and aren't seeing the bigger picture. What would you say from your perspective at this point, kind of taking a look at all of it, would be solutions? If we really are, if there's some kind of symbiotic relationship with what we do with our free will and what happens out there and vice versa, what do you see as solutions for that?
Well, I think that, I don't know what the solution to global warming is. Probably wouldn't want to be buying property on the coast. But
right.
I think really I think what's got to happen is that humans as biological organic beings have got to evolve on a cellular level, right down to the DNA, into a place where they become more synchronistic and more harmonious with their environment. Mammon does not allow that. Mammon takes you out of that and really sort of dismisses that as anything that's of importance, and in fact puts you on a cellular regression in terms of being able to be in synchronicity with your environment. And that's what really I'm talking about when I address the purification process and how important that is. People have to, you have to come to terms with their diet. They have to come to terms with, exercising, with their habits. What are they doing that's not good for them? What are they doing that's good for them? These kind of synchronicities have to be addressed so that people become more sensitive to the environment. And that's going to occur on a global level. So you're either going to be ahead of the game or in alignment with the game or behind the game. If you're behind, then that's what you were referring to earlier about getting slapped, because it's going to be difficult for you. If you're a fish out of water, it's tough. And I believe that that's coming down the line. I think as this planet changes, and it's in the process of evolution right now that's faster than this ever happened on this planet ever. So there's no historical records or anything that we can point our finger at and say, oh well, here this happened back then. No, this has never happened. And so it's kind of like we're all explorers on the same boat. We've got to come to terms with we're all in this together and help and support one another in terms of being able to create this collective symbiotic relationship with the planet that we inhabit.
Well, it makes me think of my challenge for many years as a therapist when people come in and they would be feeling this, we would call it ego dystonic place, right? So they have a sense of dis-ease, and they come, and usually by the time they get to me, if I haven't caught them first, their doctors put them on medication. So when I think about purification, I think in how Mammon doesn't support it, you said it almost supports cellular regression. So one of the ways that I think I've seen it is, certainly with substance abuse, but people trying to do the right thing and trusting their doctor and going to get this medication that's actually going to allow them to live with more ease in an insane world. Purification on that level is like, wait, before you take that script, let's talk about X, Y, Z. Maybe it's not you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, you've obviously had an inkling of that in terms of being being able to perceive it now because you've schooled yourself enough to be able to look back with both perception as a trained therapist and as a spiritual being. So you get a broader perspective. And so you're able to see things in a different light. And that's going to be occurring all over the planet, whether you're a scientist or a therapist or a educator or whatever, people are going to find themselves thinking and teaching and sharing thoughts that they never had 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, so that's kind of exciting to watch. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think all of particularly psychiatry is they're going to have to come to terms with the fallacies of the things, of the schools of thought that they have heavily invested themselves in, whether that be, drugs or schooling or whatever, and that's where it's going to get tough for the human race, because that's where you get people slamming up against the door, because they've been schooled, and they've spent lots of money and educated themselves and got ingrained into this particular school of thought that is going to support them. And then, all of a sudden people are running around going, yeah, well, what about this perspective? Well, they don't want to hear it because they're invested in this other way. And so that's where the push and pull is going to come on the planet with the humans, as who's willing to get a little more flexible and start understanding and seeing what's evolving here, what's coming, and then let go of the belief systems that are holding them on to, these set of beliefs that they're willing, that they want to fight to defend, and to me, I put that under the heading of a fear of consciousness, and I see that in a lot of polarity that's going on, particularly in the government and politics and stuff. You've got these people that are just both on the right and the left. I mean, they're just holding on tooth and nail to these belief systems. And by God, they're going to prove that they're right and other people are wrong. But in some ways you're both wrong. In some ways you're both right. But you got to have a different perspective to be able to see that.
Yet when one's whole ego identity is based on I am so-and-so, call me Dr. so-and-so, and then you've got the pharmacological industry, which I think is the first or second largest money-making industry in this country. It's going to be very interesting to see, can that in fact tumble? And I, 10, 15 years ago was saying this stuff to psychiatrists, some of the best in the business, and I pretty much think they just sat there and thought I was nuts.
Right.
And maybe still would. Like with this one little person, just trying to do the right thing, coming against this establishment, and all of it, all the arrows pointed towards me being wrong.
Right.
So that's what I worry about in terms of the people that now may have an inkling that there's something a little more to rise up to, but they don't quite know how and what.
Well, and that's the dilemma of the day, because we're in such a high degree of transition right now that that's a natural outcome. When you have people who have put in the work to become more highly evolved with their spiritual aspect, when they run into the people who are holding on to their Mammonite agenda, there's a conflict there. And it's really based on a fear of consciousness. Now, the fear of consciousness, which is, I'm going to go off on that a little bit here because I'm writing a book about that right now. I made a statement in the book the other day. Like, of course, when I write, I kind of go off on the zone, and I'll write stuff up, and I'll go back and read it and go, well, why did I say that? One of the statements I made was I said, one day we'll look back and we'll see that 80 to 90% of the decisions that we were making during this particular period of mankind were not from our own free will. That they were made out of a manipulative environment, and when I thought, boy, that's a pretty heavy duty statement. So I started thinking about it, and I said, what Spirit came in is, look, you have to go back, and you have to start. The starting picture is everybody on the planet becomes fully consciously aware of their angelic self with total complete command of their divine gifts, and are working together as a collective to not only help this planet evolve, but to help the whole solar system evolve. Now work back to that, to where you are right now, and you can get a better understanding of why you're saying 80 to 90% of the decisions that people are making are not from their own free will. So the fear consciousness, how that works into that equation is when your soul is born, you receive what's called the original signature. And this is a cellular memory that's implanted in you by the Creator. And that original signature is unique to yourself. Yet it is also a goal that your soul seeks to remember and to manifest. When you're obsessed with Mammon, there's a guilt associated with the fact that a part of you knows that you're ignoring and refusing to acknowledge a very important contract that you signed when you received the gift of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the gift of life in this term, it would be when you were birthed as a soul. And so when the part of you knows that, there's a sadness there. There's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of loss. And so what do? Well, let's go see what's in the medicine cabinet. Let's go down to the bar and knock back a few. I mean, that's really kind of what's going on. It's like we all know something's missing. We don't know what it is, and it's so primordial that it's almost beyond the scope of our sense of being able to comprehend that we can go back and rediscover that. But we can, and we are, and we will.
I always get happy when you say that.
Right.
At the same time, I'm like, how the hell's that going to work?
Well, I mean, it's going to take a long time. I mean, it's certainly going to take a long time, no doubt about it. I mean, it's not. I don't know that you and I are going to live to see in this lifetime, but that's another fallacy of Mammon. Mammon. There's an instant gratification associated with Mammon. Like the Native Americans, when they were sitting in council, they would make decisions based on how's this going to affect the next 7 generations. Nobody does that any longer. I mean, it's all about me and now, and very few people sit up and say, well, for the next 7 generations, this is how this is going to play out.
So that you and I, who've made, just like everyone, we've made this agreement to come into this time and space in history, into our geographic location with our gifts, with our challenges, perfectly equipped for this time in history. It's good to be reminded that while it's not going to necessarily all get done now, but what can we do? How can we hold ourselves? What can we offer up or archive for safety and transmit somehow for our children the next step in this evolution? And so it takes a lot of courage, I think, for many people to go against, when you talked before about the 80 to 90% of decisions we make are not of our free will. I completely get what you're saying. I think how I get it, how I perceive what you're saying is that we are programmed, and don't have a sense of, and until you're living a self-aware life with your observer self kind of watching your reactions to just about everything. All those reactions, if you're not conscious all the time of something said and, I have a flinch there. Is that mine? Is that theirs? What am I flinching? But not reacting to it, but just really considering. If you're not living that way, which I can tell you is pretty exhausting, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to stay conscious. Yet if you don't, you're not aware of all the really small insidious ways that one is programmed. And so then when you become aware of your own programming and have conversations with people that you have every reason to think are intelligent and whatnot, and they'll just say something, it'll be like, whoa, and they don't even know. And it's a little bit frightening sometimes for me to have that experience.
Well, a lot of that conflict that you're experiencing is the friction between the Mammonite and the non-Mammonite worlds, because it's almost like you want to grab people by the lapel and shake them, and say, kind of understand this, it doesn't go over real well, but.
And it's not because I want to be right, it's because I love them.
Yeah.
I don't care about being right, I wish I wasn't, but yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they're not only are they programmed, but they're so heavily invested in the program that there's a resistance to it, and generally, people end up popping out of that either because they hit rock bottom and they realize that, something's seriously wrong because my life is a complete wreck, or they stumble onto something else that makes sense to them, and they hear somebody talking or become part of something, and their curiosity is sparked, so that's kind of what I think you're doing with this program. You want to set it up where the information get out there where maybe it'll tap into somebody's curiosity who wouldn't normally have the opportunity or might not go to they wouldn't go to a workshop, or they wouldn't go to someplace that Ojai or someplace where because they're so heavily invested in their program, they don't see the need to. But maybe they hear this program, they hear this interview going on with somebody, and they're listening to it, and they're thinking, well, that actually makes some sense, and I've never looked at it from that perspective. So it's planting seeds out there that are eventually going to grow into a conversation, and that person who might listen to this be someplace later with some friends and go, I got to tell you about this thing I heard on the radio the other day, and then that brings a conversation, and all of a sudden people are starting to talk about stuff that they don't normally talk about, and I've seen that happen numerous times,
Have you? Good.
Yeah, where people who, I'll bring something up, and where several years ago, if I'd have brought it up, everybody just would sort of give me the eye roll. But now, more and more people they're all of a sudden they're pulled in. They're kind of interested. Well, tell me more. Where several years ago I didn't see that. Now so I'm really starting to see more and more people. There's more interest. There's more consciousness coming up in terms of people wanting to know what's going on. What is going on here. I know that we can know what's going on. Somebody's just not giving us the right answer.
Right. Well, I've had that feeling since I was born, so I know it well. So it's wonderful that you're saying that. And I'm also, and I think I can say that I do as well. At the same time, I see the other side, which is, okay, the idea is introduced, and then a real ferocious, almost attempt to squelch it. So if the greatest disease affecting us is unconsciousness, and the remedy is consciousness, is there a war on consciousness? Are there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's and it's kind of rooted in the battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Fortunately that battle's over. But it's going to take a while to clean up. The patterns and the timing and the behavioral belief systems that have been birthed out of that conflict on this planet. That will happen. There's a purification going on the planet as we speak, and that purification is going to continue and grow in intensity. And what that means is people's internal mechanisms are going to be changing and aligning with a more pure essence of who they really are as a divine being. That grows and increases and becomes more intense. The conversations are going to get more numerous. They're going to get more intense. They're going to get more alive. People are going to start feeling things that they haven't felt ever, and they're going to, they'll go to a national park and they'll, instead of coming away and saying, wow, that was a really great view, they'll be coming going, what did we just experience? That was amazing, I feel something changed. What's going on? The context of the conversation is going to change.
If people get out of their element and go up to the park. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. And I think I'm seeing it now. I see it and hear about it more from people who are at least at the place where they trust themselves to know that they feel like they're going nuts, but they know they're not nuts. And, everyone's grasping, is it this blood moon? Is it because there's this pie? Is it the sun? And I think about the sun as actually a way to take in knowledge. The sun transmits knowledge to plants, which allows them to use their inner workings to grow. So are we, as humans, the same? If there are more light rays, more intensity, are we being challenged to know something at a deeper level?
Yeah, absolutely. But not just the sun, but the whole stars, the whole star nation. We're receiving massive amounts of knowledge from all different types of star systems. Because this solar system is going through a massive reinvigoration of itself, and so the sun not only is putting out that information and that knowledge, but the stars are picking up on it, and they're processing it, and then they're adding their piece to it. So there's like a mosaic of knowledge that's coming into planet Earth at this time, and it's integrating itself into the planet, into the mineral world, into the animal world, into the plant world. It's just integrating all and touching all of the children of grandmother in ways they've never been touched before. Knowledge has never been shared before. And so, as that increases, the humans will of course, be probably the last to pick up on it, but that's all right, But we're absorbing this knowledge and this information, whether we're conscious of it or not.
And that's what seems to be causing a little disturbance in the field, or the natives are getting restless, or whatever, however we would say it. So one of the questions is, well, in light of a human programming, societal programming that is telling them who they are when they already are born who they are. It's just kind of reversed engineering gone amok. How can we, in light of that programming, if we would agree that, okay, something is shifting, how do we poise ourselves to receive and integrate the knowledge that's coming not through our textbooks, but through the sky?
The best and easiest way is to get out to the wilderness, to get out in nature. Like you said, though, how do you get somebody who's heavily invested in Mammon to, want to do that? Because certainly with the private ownership of land and the ability to access wilderness but if you can get out into these particular spaces, particularly where spaces, if you're aware of that are known as sacred power spots, you can kind of go and spend some time there, and in a very short period of time pick up absorb a whole lot of knowledge that will then play out over several months with you, as you become more willing to accept or acknowledge additional information. Then the knowledge that you've downloaded in those particular spaces will begin to surface in your consciousness, and there again you end up with conversations that you haven't ever thought about having before, and you're wondering, where did this come from? But and then the other thing is, people have just got to come to terms with the way their habits are. What are they doing that harm them? Are they drinking Cokes, Dr. Peppers, 7-Ups? Are they drinking sodas? Are they are they drinking diet drink or, I mean, there's so much stuff out there that the Mammonites have planted into our world that harms us and blocks off our ability to receive knowledge. I mean, I go in a grocery store. I'm like circling. I try to get away from most of the stuff.
I just had a picture of you running through, screaming.
I go near the detergent aisle, and just go, oh my God, how do I get out of here?
Yeah, it's supposed to smell good, but it smells like repellent. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, that was just, we have to come to terms with it. We have to come to the realization that, this whole thing with gluten now, that's starting to become a big deal. Somebody told me the other day that there's 40% more gluten in the food than there was 10 years ago. And that's because they're trying. They need to keep this stuff fresh on the shelf. But the human body, you can't process it. You can't process gluten. And most of those corporations, when they're making decisions about, well, is this good for the human body or is this good for our profits? Where it take long for them to figure out which one they're going with.
Mm. Well, what's the motivation? I mean, the troubling thing about that is like, okay, so our own people, whatever that means, are poisoning their own people.
Yeah.
It's like, and so that's the part that's ever so disturbing is when one lets their mind wonder of like who is and what is the enemy. I mean, in a way, it's within each of us if we're programmed. But
well, again, I mean, that dilemma is again, we're in this period of transition, so it's real difficult when you're on point as somebody who has taken it upon themselves to assume the role of a supporter of a transition. Last things that happen for you is you're going to be popular, because you're telling people stuff they don't want to know, and you're calling them up on their shadow, and so, but more and more people that are involved in the corporate world and are going to start blowing the whistle on what's going on. I mean, it's kind of one of the interesting things about the Obama administration. They're supposedly one of the least transparent administrations. This, White House press corps the other day sent a list of demands. I feel like, enough of this. I mean, I think you're going to see more and more people coming up out of these institutional structures and saying, you know what, this is wrong. What they're doing is wrong, and here's why it's wrong. And I think we're going to see more and more of that coming on over the next few years because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take people that are willing to put themselves aside, like, Snowden, and stepping up and saying, hey, here's where they're going with this, and this ain't good, and,
right.
I think, that's, I just think we're going to see more and more of that coming about, but for the people who are sort of caught, between both worlds because they can see both of those worlds, it's tough.
Right. It is very,
it's a real hard time.
Yeah. And I would say at this juncture in life, I'm kind of surrounded by all of it, a little, because I've kind of took myself out of a little more Mammon functioning place, yet then now in the place that I am at geographically, just see the same thing, but kind of the remnants of it, that just people just walking around kind of aimlessly, some kind of zombified, others just confused, others go into a very self-absorbed narcissistic place. Everybody's afraid to die.
Right.
So I think I like what you said about the seven generation plan, because it takes one out of that just fear of death, what's going to happen to me and my comfort, onto this is a longer term thing, and I'm part of a longer term thing.
Yeah, that's vitally important. The whole, death is really, it's nothing more than stepping from one room to another room. You're in one room, suddenly you find yourself in another room, and the consciousness of the two rooms is vitally are hugely different. And so, but I think for me, being able to accept that and understand that was really based on me learning how to, work with councils in the spirit world and be able to communicate with them and challenge them. It wasn't like when I work with these groups, I don't just, I say, oh, wow, I challenge them to prove up something they're saying or whatever, and
right, throw it
the
bone.
yeah, and so that I'm not just taking anything for granted, and so,
right.
But that helps. It helps you understand that it's just an evolutionary process, that you've done many, many times before, and you will do many, 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 many more times, and when you can incorporate that into your consciousness, I remember years ago the ultimate Mammonite T-shirt was, he who dies with the most toys wins, Well, I remember all the friends of mine back in Dallas who used to wear that T-shirt are in fact now dead.
Right. Or living in that
and,
other dimension and saying,
and they got the toys and they died. So the T-shirt worked, and it was all the addictions that killed them, So there's a bright world ahead. The more we're able to extract ourselves out of that Mammonite mindset and open ourselves up to a bigger picture and allow that bigger picture to unfold and as the creator in whichever way you choose to do that, to help that picture unfold for you. Help this thing, let me see a bigger, brighter future for myself and for this planet, because I feel that I'm wearing shades. I'm wearing my sight is not able. I'm not able to see the periphery. I'm only able to focus straight ahead, and I need to be able to broaden my perceptions in order to feel better about myself, feel better about this life experience, feel better about my fellow man. It's really quite amazing what happens when you make that jump. It really is.
Absolutely. So I guess the thing that has always fascinated me, and I don't know if I'll ever get the answer to it, but with respect to what you were just describing, the person with that sense of dis-ease saying, my perception is limited, and hence the humility to ask something that they can't see with, or experience with the five senses per se. That's assuming we just have five senses, which I would argue that we have many more. And yet, if the person doesn't get there, and I've just for my whole life been intrigued with why some people would say what you just said and mean it, and just in a moment pray to the thing that made the sun come up. That's what, we didn't make it, something else did, pray to that. The thing bigger than us for assistance in being able to take, to ask for something, to receive the information that's going to come in the response to what you asked. Certain people will ask that, and certain people won't even begin to think that would be so frightening to some, where it would be very natural to others. So I guess I think in summation, it's like that saying, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Do you think there are some people that just don't have them, or do you think every being is possible of obtaining them?
Oh, everybody's got them, absolutely. It's it's just unfortunately in this culture, God has been sort of objectified as something that's out there that is abstract and unknowable.
Right, for weak people. Right.
Yeah, it's just it's something that is beyond our ability as a poor little human to comprehend. Let me ask you, as a parent, if your child said that to you, how would you feel? If your child came to you and said, well, I don't even know who you are anymore, you're beyond my reach. I don't really care for you because, we can't communicate. It would make you feel pretty bad as a parent.
Yeah.
Well, what do you suppose that God feels? When God, to me, when it shifted for me was when I said, well, maybe he's not that far away. Maybe he's really actually a very close friend and a very concerned parent.
Right.
And when I did, that, it's all of a sudden his presence was more palatable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized at that point, the shift is in me. It's not,
right.
and what happens, you always get these, how could God do this and how could God do that? No, it's what are you doing? What are
right.
you doing wrong?
Right.
Stop trying to find somebody or something else to blame for what your miscues are. You need to look at yourself, figure out where you're out of synchronicity, and change that.
And then, so the purification, that sounds like maybe with that 80% to have that lessened.
Right.
So it gets back to like, in order to even be able to receive, there has to be some kind of way that you can come up from that programming enough. Maybe the sun is doing that. Maybe the energies are coming in for this time. There's just enough consciousness that it's right. So it's like, I'm going to shine. And like out here in the desert, out here in the desert, these little tiny cacti grow up in the middle of cracks and things. And I just look down and go, oh my goodness, like that thing can survive on no water. I think that there's a lot of us that are just little roses in Spanish Harlem or little cacti in the desert, just looking for the sun, needing water too. But that helps me to be hopeful. And then the other thing is when you talk about the presence of God and how we forget. I think we're wired to forget, so we keep coming back. To ascend that spiral. So we have this kind of weird forgetting. And when it gets really bad, and times that it has for myself or with clients when they're really at the end of their rope, I say, breath. Okay, so God is right under your nose. So you breathe in and you say, help me, and you breathe out and you say, thank you. But it's the one thing that we don't have control over. When you're born, they ask if you're breathing. If you're leaving this dimension, they ask, are they still breathing? So people, they get into argument about what God is. It's like, well, just for now, let it be the fact that you're breathing. As long as that's coming into you, you're not controlling it. Something else is doing it. Sometimes I find I got to get real simple with my analytic brain.
And let me add to that by next time you go out and you find yourself in a natural setting, or even not in the natural setting, even if you're just sitting like in the square in Santa Fe or something, look at the light and look at it and see if it doesn't look different to you. See if it doesn't have sort of a white sheen to it, sort of a glistening element to it. Because that, when you see that, when you start gleaning that, is a place where you can then do the breathing into that sheen, into that glistening, and bring in this knowledge that the sun is bringing forth on a faster level, at a faster rate. You can actually absorb it into the body and see it, feel it actually penetrating your body and touching all the cells,
right,
and DNA in you, and allow that light to come in, and then be one with it, be part of it. Allow it to just pervade everything around you, and give yourself permission to release yourself into that, and you'll glean a state of consciousness that has not been available here ever before.
Wow.
And this is it's just in the early stages right now. It will continue to grow in intensity and will become a very dominant force in the planet in the years to come. But you can do it now if you put yourself in the right place, in the right frame of mind. You can tap into that right now and feel it and sense it and breathe it in and allow it to begin working with you on a cellular level, and you'll be amazed at what happens.
So, that's what I would say, kind of to close for today, is that I remember something in your book that said he spoke to you using your imagination, I think is how you put it. And so I'm thinking about how he was just saying that there's 5 senses, and we're taught that. That's part of our program. We have 5 senses. Eyes, da-da-da-da. and then boom, it's finite. Well, that's just a piece of programming. It's not finite. We have other senses, so maybe it will take imagination. Well, let me just suspend this. Let's do Frank Stronghorse suggested I do this. I got nothing better to do today. I could go to the bank or I could go sit in the sun. I think I'll go sit in the sun. And I'll just imagine that the sun is actually bringing information just like sound brings information. I have more senses that can get it, even though my brain may not process it. And that's, I think, where we have to be humble and let go and like you said in the book, use your imagination, which is a way to just say, I don't know, but maybe. Let me see if I have an experience. And try to get the mind as quiet as it'll get, So.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I mean, the imagination is the bridge out of Mammon into the non-Mammon world. That's where you get all these clashes of belief systems, I mean, if you were to try to sit down with a, fundamentalist or some other Mammonite and explain to them the existence of nature spirits and how they interact with the plants and how important it is for them to be involved in our food process, it'd be a very short conversation. Because they don't have the imagination to go there,
They would say it's not scientific. That's what the argument would be.
Yeah. And you have to have had some experience with that phenomena to accept it. And I understand that, believe me, there were parts of my life when I was definitely the guy going, thanks for sharing. That's real interesting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. You
were
that guy.
Experience. Yeah. Then I had the experience and went, oh, wow, okay. So there is something to it, And so, it happens for everybody on a different level, but definitely go out there and sit in the sun and see if you can't see it as something different than you've never seen before. And when you hit that, because you'll hit that scene where it sort of becomes like a shiny cloud and it glimmers and and then go in, use your imagination to go into that space with that scene, and it'll blow you away what you feel.
Well, I thought it was just because I just moved to New York 2 years ago that I was noticing these differences.
Yeah,
because I'm 7,000 feet closer to it. I thought it was just me. So then I hear other things like, oh no, people are feeling it all over. So. It's pretty fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, Frank. We're going to have many more of these conversations. This is awesome. You can see so many directions to follow. Yeah.
I enjoy talking with you.
Where we go and what we do, will we get that 2 by 2? I don't know. Where we going? Change for you is hope for me. Trusting him in what we'll see. I don't know, but it's time for the show.
We pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves because it is right.
We can't do anything about something that's gone, but we can do something about what's left.
Oh, that is in the world. It's really what you make. Where we go and what we do, will we get that 2 by 2?